Welcome to our third module in our board orientation EDI series. And we're going to talk about today the application of an equity lens and introduce you to that work. Talk about applying an equity lens. We're looking at our decisions and practices to determine who is burdened by or who benefits from that decision. Benefits and burdens can reinforce privilege and oppression by providing or denying access to resources, opportunities, time, or information. And some people or groups may experience both. The implications of benefits and burdens may be social, economic, political, physical, or psychological. So when we apply an equity lens to the work or to a situation, we continue to ask a variety of questions to really dig deep and to understand who's benefited from and who's burdened by a particular program or practice that we have. So if you think back to our equality versus equity graphic that we had, we would ask things like, who's responsible for moving those boxes? What if that tall person doesn't want to give up their box? What if the short person needs help getting up on the box? Who's going to help them? What if you don't have the resources to move the boxes? I think that's something we can all relate to these days. And what if there are others who want to see the game and we don't have enough boxes? So it's these type of questions that will help us really dig into what are the issues, what are the true issues that are causing the inequities, and allow us the opportunity to really create strategies to remove those barriers or to create more equitable practices. I'm going to look at a little case study here. And I want you to apply your equity lens. Who experiences the benefits and what are they? Who experiences the burdens and what are they? And think about the different people, organizations, and institutions involved, including those not directly named here. So this is another short video. And I will tell you that when we meet together as a group, we're going to talk about this a little bit and just sort of explore what we heard and what assumptions we might have made at the very beginning.
How do these policies stack up against the other big tech companies?
So, Alex, what Netflix is doing is by far, as I can tell, the most generous policy, parental leave policy in the country. 52 weeks paid for moms and dads. It starts immediately. You don't have to take disability, which means you can still remain connected to work if you want to. You can break up the leave, take a little bit now, go back to work, take more leave later. And just today now, Microsoft also updating its policy, not nearly as generous, giving moms and dads, though, 12 weeks of paid leaves. Moms get up to 20 weeks of paid leave, but still a huge step in the right direction. Obviously, Alex, this has been a major topic of discussion, keeping women in the technology industry. This is still a mostly white, a mostly male industry, and there's a lot of concern about women, especially moms, leaving early. At Facebook, you get about 4 months for moms and dads paid leave. You also get $4,000 in baby cash. Google, you get 12 weeks paid for moms and dads. Moms actually get up to 18 weeks paid. So there's still a bit of a difference at some companies in terms of what women and men get, but you're certainly seeing a number of these companies taking big steps toward more equity in these parental leave policies, which is a huge thing when you talk about recruiting and competition for talent.
Right, and that was my first thought, Emily, when I saw these headlines cross. Yes, they want to keep more women, but also does this demonstrate how competitive the tech industry is when it comes to talent?
I mean, Alex, this is for me as a mom, and I'm sure you as a new mom, this is something that would really move the needle. If I could take a year off every time I had a child to spend with that child. Yes, I think this is something that employees are increasingly thinking about and could certainly move the needle for someone deciding between one company and another. I recently sat down with Sheryl Sandberg and Richard Branson to talk about these work-family issues, and one of the interesting things that they disagreed on, Sheryl Sandberg said, look, we know that we're Facebook, not every company can afford to make leave policies this generous, and Branson actually disagreed and thinks companies can do more. Take a listen to that conversation.
Not every workplace can be as flexible as the kind of flexibility I think Virgin or Facebook could offer, and we sit here knowing that. But a lot of work.
I'm not sure you're right.
Really? What should those companies do?
I think most companies. I mean, there are some. Like if you're, say, if you're flying for an airline, you're going to have to, check in at a certain time and check out at a certain time, or else the plane doesn't fly. But I think, most sort of head office type of jobs around the world, they can offer, complete flexibility.
And Branson is starting to put his money where his mouth is. At Virgin Management, which is a small part of Virgin Group, you do get 52 weeks of parental leave paid shared between moms and dads. And Virgin says they're trying to do that at all of Virgin's companies around the world. One of the interesting things out of Facebook, and this is something that Sheryl Sandberg specifically has pushed, is the importance of giving moms and dads the same amount of leave. Her big thing is that if you give more leave to moms, then that sort of reinforces this idea that women are the primary caregiver and that dads shouldn't be taking as much time off as moms, and that the most important thing is that men and women get equal time off. It can be a little tricky though, because sometimes employees, when they get unlimited leave, ultimately take less leave. So it'll be interesting to see how this Netflix policy.
So I'm going to leave you with a few reflections to consider. So, like I said, we will be talking about these. How might the Netflix parental leave policy create a more equitable workplace? How might the Netflix parental leave policy create or worsen inequities in the workplace? How might the leave policy be made more equitable? And imagine that all large employers adopted an identical parental leave policy. What would be the equity implications for workers and their families? It's quite a generous offer, 52 weeks of paid leave. So next, we're going to briefly talk about how to apply an equity lens. Whoa, went too fast. When we apply an equity lens to our work, we are going to be looking specifically at AACN, our policies, practices, and programs to determine who's benefited by or burdened from the policies that we're working on or the items that we're looking at. We will have a systematic approach to the equity lens application work, and that approach will likely evolve over time as we learn more and we grow. So policies are those things that are outlining a set of principles and ideals, guide us in how we make decisions, and clarifies intent. So we have HR policies, IT policy, finance policies. A practice is the direct application or the use of knowledge or skills specific to a particular profession, like workflows, how a policy is applied, what are the norms, both written and unwritten, that might be subject to benefiting or burdening one group over another. And a program is a specified set of activities that are combined according to precise guidance and in order to achieve a special purpose. These are things for AACN like a beacon application review program or content development program, etc. CSI. In most organizations, these components are interdependent. Policies and programs are only as effective as the ways in which they are put into practice, and programs and practices often require policies to be successful. So what does that process look like? If you apply an equity lens to policy, then your discussion may include many aspects of program and practices as you discuss whether and how well the policy creates, fosters, and supports equity, diversity, and inclusion. The same applies if your focus is on another component. If you're focusing on a practice, then you'll likely consider the elements of policy and program. If you're focusing on a program, then you'll likely consider elements of policy and practice. So all of these are sort of interrelated. So first, we will evaluate the current EDI state. We'll look at who's benefited, who's burdened, how does it address diversity, how does it address inclusion. We'll look at who is benefited and burdened by that current state. We'll look at what institutional reasons this policy, practice, or program might exist in the way that it does. We'll identify strategies that we believe would improve and increase the equity of a particular program, practice, or policy. We'll then look at what are the limiting institutional barriers that would prevent us from implementing some of these strategies for improvement. And then from that, we will look and identify what are the feasible strategies. Each step asks a series of questions to ensure that the item has been explored from all the different EDI perspectives. Once we've identified feasible strategies, we'll then look at what's the low-hanging fruit, or what strategies would be the easiest to implement. What are the stretch strategies that would be feasible but challenging to implement? And what would be the ultimate impact of those solutions? So if it was simple, how much of an impact is it going to be? If it's a big, more stretched strategy, is that going to help us move the needle forward faster, even though it might be more complex? Things like that. So these are all things that we're going to consider. And in the next module, we'll talk about, well, how does this fit in with our plan? Because while we're in the beginning stages of this process, it is a process that we will be using down the line. So that's it for this short module. And next, we're just going to talk briefly about EDI at AACN. So I'll see you then.